You're welcome. Hi everyone, welcome to another Broken Meeple review, and yes, I know that you had an influx of reviews during the top 100 fiasco, like month and a half essentially. Well, I had a huge backlog of reviews to catch up with, and therefore they were put out in good steady state throughout the last few weeks. Well, that backlog is now ended, and then being replaced with another one. Yes, no, there's a lot of games to get through. However, this one I hope some of you have been waiting to hear about. Viral. Viral is the newest game in the Dice Tower Essentials line, known for such great classics as Sheriff of Nottingham and Onitama, both of which are on my shelf and both of which featured very, very highly in my top 100. Viral is the newest lineup, and it is a straight up area control game. Nothing about it can be denied. This is mean area control game. Each player takes control of a virus, and you are infecting this poor person's body. Now relax, this guy survives at the end of the day, so you're just basically having fun for the game, and then eventually you're cured and the guy survives. So, try not to take it too literally in that case. But the idea is that there are different organs of the body, so the brain, the lungs, the digestive system, the kidneys, that kind of thing. And you are placing your virus tokens in those areas, and you're trying to get control of various zones. So the 2 separate kidneys will be a zone, the 2 separate lungs will be a zone, the brain by itself will be a zone, that sort of thing. The board is really well laid out, it shows all the different zones and organs, it's very clear to see where things are. But what you are doing is that you will have a hand of cards that consist of, let me put that there for a second. They'll consist of a hand of cards consisting of the different zones and some action cards. Now they're very basic and everybody has the same starter cards. And there'll be things like reproduction to add new viruses to the body. There'll be things like migration to move your viruses through the circulatory, is that the word? Through the system, through the blood vessels to other organs. And there's various other things like attacking other viruses and shielding yourself from harm, that kind of thing. You will do this for, the first turn in a simultaneous action selection phase, where basically twice in the round, you and your opponents will play a zone card and an action card, together face down. You'll then reveal, and in turn order you'll resolve. You'll repeat the exact same thing one more time, before eventually you'll discard those cards out of the way for the round. And then what that means is that for the next round, you aren't allowed to use those cards you just played. You have to use what's left in your hand. And then in subsequent rounds, you will pick those cards that you discarded back up, and whatever you played in that round will move into that pile. So you're constantly having to bear in mind that you will not be able to spam the same zone twice in 2 separate rounds. As you go through the game and level up in points, you will score on a track that will enable you to buy new action cards which are unique and different from everybody else. And these will do all sorts of things like absorbing viruses, attacking other viruses, to pulling them from other organs, to pushing them out of yours, all sorts of crazy shenanigans you can do. But they're basically upgrades to your current cards. And these will be worth points depending on how good the ability is. As the game progresses, event cards will trigger that, score different parts of the body or just cause different things to happen. And if you pile up too many viruses in one particular organ, you will end up with a crisis that essentially means that the immune system has got wind of your, mass virus attack and eventually shuts you out. But again, you can score points from this. As well as this, you have to be careful about the doctors outside. I like to joke that it's House MD and his team. If you've ever watched that series with Hugh Laurie, then you know what I'm on about. If not, go watch it because it's fantastic. But I get that theme that they're outside trying to figure out, this is how we cure this virus. And if you get too big for your britches and score too many points too rapidly, then they will eventually learn how to deal with you, and they'll wipe you off the face of the board, and you have to reinfect all from scratch. This tends to happen to everybody in the game at some point, but when it happens is up to you, and sometimes you can actually go through a whole game without it happening at all, if you're very crafty. But basically this takes place over 6 rounds, and you will keep going and you'll control different organs, you will score points, you will collect more cards until eventually the person with the most victory points, be it from the score track, the cards you've acquired, and what you control at the end, is the winner. That's basically the gist of how Viral runs. What do I think of it? It's certainly a very sleek and very clean design. One thing I've got to say about this, the graphic design and the artwork are perfectly suited to this game. The cartoony artwork fits the theme very well and means that you're not taking it quite too much to heart with regards to the fact that you're infecting some poor sap's body. But the artwork is very striking, it's very colourful, the graphic design is ultra clear. In fact, the different phases of a round are laid out on the left hand side of the board perfectly in order and perfectly with good iconography. That means it's so easy to tell what you do in each round. A quick skim of the rules will tell you how to play the game, and very rarely will you find that you have to double check the rulebook in order to get things right. It's such a clean system, and credit has to go to the publisher and the designers for getting the rulebook and the graphic design in such a way that it's very easy to teach this game to new people. I've had no trouble with this, be it gamers or non-gamers. They pick up the rules really easily. Now, does that mean that it's such an easy game to play that it's pretty much autopilot? No! Oh my god, no. And this can lead to one of the flaws of the game, because this is more thinky than you might think. When you're deciding what cards you want to play, you're like, but if I go in the brain, he can do that. I could move from the brain to the heart, or the heart to the kidneys. Do I need to infect that first? Should I shield? But I'm going to get wiped out at the end. Despite the fact you only have so many cards in your hand, and this builds up over the course of the game, so eventually I'll have quite a big hand worth of options. My god, this game makes you think. There's a good amount of depth to this, and it's not an autopilot at all. If you just randomly play your cards, you will lose, full stop. You have to know what you're doing, and you have to be able to think, this is where I need to go, this is where they could go, because you can't ignore your opponents, because this is a mean area control game. You're in each other's faces from day one, and you are screwing over your opponent whenever you can. So if you're not comfortable with mean area control games, you might want to give this one a little pass. But if you're comfortable with that, then this is definitely one for you. Now, the problem with the flaw I mentioned, well, it's a very thinky game. Great. It has a lot of depth for what is very simplistic rules. Great as well. This, however, can lead itself to a significant amount of analysis paralysis. Now I get the idea that it's subjective based on the group, but you have to accept that there's going to be a lot of times you're teaching this to new players and they won't understand the game fully on their first try. This is one of those that you must play it once to really get the grasp of how to play it. And people will freeze up when they're deciding their options. They will take a while over those cards. Yeah, there'll be some people that do it really quickly, but, the exception does not disprove the rule. This lends itself to a lot of analysis paralysis, and you have to bear that in mind. Which means that despite the level of interaction you get with 4 or 5 players, I'm a little hesitant to bring this out with that many players. I certainly don't mind it with 4 if people know what they're doing. The game can progress fairly quickly. With 5, it's just too long. Even though you're playing the action simultaneously, you might have already decided what you're doing, and then you've got to sit and wait for another person to hurry up and choose their cards. 5 is a little bit too long for my liking for what is a fairly simplistic game. 3 is a very good amount, and 2 is a very good amount as well. No solo mode, I'm afraid, though, for some of you out there. Now, that does mean that you do have this flaw of a bit of downtime in the game dragging out. In fact, what does the game say? Game claims 60 to 90 minutes. Now, on the plus side, that is fairly accurate actually. With 2 to 3 players, you should be able to get this done in about 60 to 75 minutes without too much trouble, including teaching actually. With 4, you're definitely looking at the 90-minute mark, and 5 players, 90, maybe more, especially with new players. Which is why, like I say, I'm hesitant to play this with 5 players. I much prefer to play this with 3 or 4. And you know me, I don't often get 2 players to the table, so I've not actually tried this with 2 players. I will stipulate. I've tried it with 3, 4 and 5. 3 is definitely my favourite. 4 is still pretty good. 5 is just that little bit too long for my liking. But the great thing with Viral is that it's easy to pick up, read through the rules quick, and get stuck in. There's a reason these go into the Dice Tower Essentials line, because they're easy to pick up and get going, but they have enough depth to make you want to come back for more, and this one does that in spades, because you'll play it once and you'll think, that's how that works, or this combo worked well, but I could try this combo. And a lot of that comes down to the cards themselves, because these new ones that you buy, they're very varied, they're all unique, so you'll have a different variety every game, and you'll be able to deduce combos that you can think, you know, if I do that with that and that, I can have like so much movement it's unreal. Or I could spend all my time absorbing other viruses so that I have total control. Or I could just have all the really rubbish cards that are all worth maximum victory points, just to say that I've got this extra bit of lead throughout the game. It's very tense, the scores can be quite tight, and the tiebreaker rule is very, worth bearing in mind, that whoever's at the back gets the tiebreaker sort of advantage, because there's a lot of times you'll be breaking ties in this game, and you need to be aware of that as a significant factor. The event cards are also quite varied. You use 6 in the game, and I think there's about like 10 to 12 or so in the pack. They do different things each round, but everything's just so... The best way I can describe this game is that it's incredibly streamlined. The artwork and graphic design works perfectly with the theme. The turn sequence and the round sequence is laid out perfectly in order that you can even track with a little token that half the time I forget to move, but you can see on the board how the phases progress. So it's a really easy one to pick up and play. The rules themselves are very simple, but it makes you think. It has that... I'm trying to think of another game. Splendor, actually. Think of Splendor. The rules to that game are so simple, are they not? But how often do you sit there and think, I could buy that card, but I got to think, he's going to buy that one first. Maybe I should wait. Oh wait, in 2 turns I could save up to buy that card there. That amount of time that makes you think is an indicator of how much depth a game can have. And this one does exactly the same. It will make you think. If you are basically doing your turns within about 2 seconds, chances are you're not paying enough attention to what your opponents are doing and what potential negative effects could afflict you in the next round, because you need to be paying attention to yourself and your opponents. So the interaction in this game is pretty high. Now I will say, like I said, the analysis paralysis is a problem, and variety-wise, it's okay. I mean, you're still controlling the same areas, and the scores for each area do fluctuate from game to game. Not to a drastic extent, but enough to keep each game a little bit fresh. Like, one game, the kidneys might be such a high scoring area. The next game, they might be pretty worthless, and the digestive system is where it's at. But then you pay attention to how many research points they give you that allow, like, House MD and his team to go, like, essentially cure you, and you'll think, well, I could get points there, but now suddenly I'm getting hunted down by the doctors. Maybe I should go there where it's not as many points, but it's a little bit safer. Plus, if I'm at the back, I'll break ties. You see, there's a lot of things that you can think about with this game, and it does a great job of that. Do I think it's a gateway game? Possibly. It's at that borderline. It's kind of like the same level as Takinoko. Because Takinoko, some people regard as a gateway game, but there's a fair amount you've got to teach in it and quite a bit of depth. this is kind of that same level. The rules are generally quite simple, but there's enough depth in here that a new gamer might be at that borderline as to whether it was too much for them or not. But that's entirely dependent on the group you're teaching to. Viral is generally a very good game. Arcane Wonders and Dice Tower Essentials have hit it out of the park again. I think that, if this gets enough distribution, it will get significant buzz as a great area control game. But I will say, the analysis paralysis is quite a big problem. It's not just a minor gimmick. No, analysis paralysis will hit people in this, and sometimes you might get the impression that you're only doing so much in the game compared to how much time the game takes. Because you've got to select those cards like twice in a round, and then the rest of it is basically an admin phase. So for the whole 90 minutes or so that you're involved in this game, you're only really doing 2 actions a round. And there's only 6 rounds. So you're doing 12 different action selection phases. Doesn't seem like a lot really, does it? Especially when you might be sat there going, hurry up and choose your cards. I mean, it's getting to the point where I feel like a sand timer is needed in this in order to, get people to decide within 60 seconds, what are you going to do? Because if you take any longer than that, you are going to sit there, fairly bored while you wait for things to happen. Again, subjective, but this is the experience I've been having. Hence, I don't really want to play this with 5 players ever again. But, 3 and 4 work particularly well, and I think 2 would work just as well, if that's your thing. So, at the end of the day, a great, solid game and a new entry in the Dice Tower Essentials line. So I'm going to give Viral, I'm going to give it 8 loaded syringes. That's, I think, a solid rating for this game. It is definitely an excellent title and one that you should consider. Time length can be an issue, analysis paralysis can be an issue. Variety is okay, but not fantastic. It's better when you draft. There is a variant here where you can draft those cards, but I don't recommend that for new players. So for the most part, you're going to be playing this where you choose from a tableau of cards. But I have tried the drafting variant and it is pretty cool. But of course, you're going to do that with experienced gamers only. So that's it for me. I'll see you on the next Broken Meeple review. If you like what you see, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and the podcast and my written reviews. But for now, just remember, no matter how badly you affect this poor guy's body in here, and no matter how mean it gets, remember that Viral is still only a game. As always, see you on the next episode. Take care. Have a great weekend.